Well, thank you very much, everyone. Ray, I know we have a lot to get to, and I want to let everybody know that we have more than 20 questions. A lot of them had to do with the same topic. We're going to get to those in a few minutes, but before we get to your questions and some polling that we're going to do during this call, let's hear from County Manager Ray Gonzalez. Ray, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank all of you for once again carving out this time to meet with us over the phone. A few weeks have passed since our last discussion, and as you have learned last week, we have extended our building closure. We are now planning to keep county buildings closed to the public through the month of May. The plan is to reopen on Monday, June 1st, but this will certainly not be business as usual upon our return. To that end, a team of cross-functional leaders have been working with elected offices and department directors on a plan to transition back into our buildings. This group will continue their work through May, and I know some of you have submitted questions about this important project. We will get to those questions, as Jim mentioned, and many more in a few minutes. Across the organization, COVID-19 has had a dramatic impact, and it runs much deeper than modified operations. I know some of you listening have contracted the virus and thankfully recovered. I am also aware that some of you are mourning the loss of loved ones and relatives who have passed away due to COVID. I want to send all of you and your families our deepest condolences on your loss. This has been a difficult time for all of us, but especially painful for you and your families. As we continue to monitor data and reports from local, state, and national public health agencies, we have learned this crisis is far from over. Here in Colorado, more than 500 people have been lost to COVID, and despite the governor's safer-at-home order, which is effective today, the data in the metro area contributed to the decision from Tri-County Health and other partner agencies to extend the stay-at-home order until May 8th. This order impacts which businesses can choose to reopen with proper social distancing measures in place. These business closures have obviously had a tremendous impact on our local economy and unemployment figures. While we have thankfully been able to protect all of your jobs, several cities in the metro area have been forced to furlough or lay off hundreds of employees. The difference between our cities and the county has a lot to do with our funding sources and the way we are structured. Many of our cities have been heavily impacted by the loss of sales tax revenue, which makes up nearly 60 to 70% of their revenue. The county's primary source of revenue is property tax. We expect to see a minor reduction in this revenue stream in the years to come, but through strategic cost-cutting measures and a robust cash reserve, we still believe we can weather this storm and preserve our jobs. Some examples of ways we intend to rein in some of our expenses include eliminating of non-essential travel, maximizing internal resources to avoid outsourcing when possible, and reconsidering our capital projects and major maintenance plans. As I've said throughout this crisis, we will get through this together, and that means the shared sacrifice will be felt in every department to ensure we maintain staffing levels. Speaking of sacrifices, I want to commend all of you for adapting to your new work environment. For those of you who continue to work in the field, this means the use of PPE, social distancing, one person per vehicle, and many other measures we've introduced in an effort to keep you healthy and safe. A few weeks ago, the commissioners approved $350,000 for the purchase of PPE. I want to thank OEM and the county manager staff for working to find a legitimate vendor and acquiring the first round of this critically important equipment. A second order has been placed to help us build a stockpile of surgical-grade masks for employees who will interact with the public in forward-facing positions. For those of you working from home who will return to an office setting, we are working to secure cloth masks that you will be able to wash and reuse. Regardless of where you work, you all done an amazing job of standing up your operations and keeping things moving. We have been asked by countless counties and cities for our plans and documents so they could model what we're doing in Adams County. If a crisis truly brings out the best in people, we have proven to be a leader across the state in responding during these trying weeks and months. I'll have a few more messages later in the call, but I want to make sure we can answer as many questions as possible. So I'll turn things over to Jim now to facilitate the Q&A portion of this call. Jim?
All right, thanks, Ray. Before we get to those questions, we want to take advantage of the polling feature that these calls provide to us. So you can answer these by pressing a button on your cell phone. So go ahead and hit your keypad so it's up and ready. We're going to ask 4 of them, and we'll sprinkle them throughout the questions that you have so we can capture the correct answers. So the first poll question, and it's more of a statement, and we made these easy, so you only have to hit 1 or 2, not multiple choice all the way down. The statement is, I feel well supported by the organization at this time. Press 1 if you agree, and 2 if you disagree. Again, I feel well supported by the organization at this time. Press 1 if you agree, and 2 if you disagree. Now those are some of your questions, and thanks so much for emailing them in advance. Heidi, the first question is going to be in your wheelhouse, so we'll start with you. What is our policy on wearing masks? Which kind and how often will we change them once the buildings are reopened in June? Go ahead, Heidi.
Thanks, Jim. So at this point, it is our plan that we require masks in all of our workplaces. The type of mask is really kind of dependent on the type of work you're doing and how much interaction you have with the public. It is our hope that we will have enough cloth masks for all office employees and then hopefully have enough of the disposable surgical-grade masks for those employees who interact most closely with the public. As you heard Ray say, it's been a major effort getting any of these in, and we continue to try and order more so that we have enough supply. But as you can imagine, some of our first responders are going through masks at a pretty decent rate. And so we want to make sure we have enough for everyone, but we can't promise that. Obviously, supply and demand, and we're not sure what will be available, but just know we are all doing our best to get in everything that we can to protect our employees when they do return to work.
All right, thanks, Heidi. We've got a couple people and culture questions sprinkled in here. Chris, we'll have you answer those. The first one is, I have health conditions, such as chronic asthma, that makes me more vulnerable to this virus. What will it look like for people like myself when we return to county buildings? Will I be one of those that will be at home for the unforeseeable future? Chris, go ahead.
Good afternoon, everybody. Certainly miss seeing everybody and having the type of fun that we usually encounter on a daily basis working in Adams County. So for anybody who has any concerns of returning to our buildings due to an existing health concern, please just reach out to PNC and we'll help walk you through the process.
Okay, great. So reach out to People and Culture directly if you are somebody with a pre-existing condition. All right, we have some more questions coming up in just a second, but first our second poll question, so you'll have the chance to hit 1 or 2 on this as well. The statement is, the frequency of communication from leaders has been effective. Press 1 if you agree. 2 if you disagree. Again, the frequency of communication from county leaders has been effective. 1 if you agree. 2 if you disagree. All right, the next question, we'll let Ray handle this one. It says, Ray, I recently found out from Jeffco Public Schools that they have canceled their summer daycare program, which means that I will likely be without daycare for my 7-year-old daughter this summer. Governor Polis is indicating the possibility that students may or may not be going back to school in the fall. Will the county continue to support working from home for employees with younger school-age children who have limited or no option for daycare until the time comes that the kids are able to go back to school, whatever that may be? Ray, go ahead.
Thanks, Jim. That's an excellent question. We continue to look at all of our options to adjust to this new normal. Working remotely may be required for several employees this summer as we continue to roll out a phased approach as we reopen to the public. And so in short, we are looking at all of our options, and yes, employees can expect to still remain working remotely given the phased approach that we are outlining as we consider reopening to the public.
All right, great. The next question is for Alicia. Alicia, will some or all staff return to the building before we open to the public?
Thanks, Jim. Hi, everyone. Yes, so the intention is that employees will begin to return to our building starting June 1st. There may need to be some additional support around reopening, and so some departments may have a ramping up period, facilities and fleet, for example. And I would encourage everyone to work with your supervisor over the next few weeks to understand the plan for your department or office, if that will be required.
All right, Alicia, let's stay with you. The next question has to do with facilities. It says, I must say this is extremely frustrating. By June 1st, we will have been totally out of the building for 2.5 months. When you work in the office, you have access to certain pieces of technology that you just don't have at home, printers, scanners, things like that. Is it possible to arrange a schedule that would allow access to the building, maybe 2 hours a day? It appears some are allowed access for minute periods of time. Can this policy be made more consistent? Go ahead, Alicia.
Right. I can certainly understand this frustration. So a kitchen table or the cab of a pickup aren't great substitutes for working offices. I understand that. That said, we appreciate everyone's willingness to work a bit differently during this time. There is indeed an opportunity to access technology that you might need in our building. What we have been doing throughout the closure is asking folks to work with their supervisor to coordinate those needed visits so that they may work with facilities to make this possible. This has been our approach throughout our time out of the office, and that's been done to minimize the number of folks visiting our buildings. We've heard from facilities that this has meant the ability to monitor spaces to be sure that we can keep those clean and sanitized throughout the closure. So a large block of time is probably going to be unlikely to just remain open for those purposes, but we certainly can make those things available through that coordinated effort. So I really appreciate everyone's help with that.
All right, thanks, Alicia. We'll give you a break here and insert our third poll question. So, folks, you'll have a chance here to press 1 or 2. And the statement is, the communication from leaders, including directors and county leadership, helps me feel informed. Press 1 if you agree, 2 if you disagree. Again, the communication from leaders, including directors and county leadership, helps me feel informed. Press 1 if you agree with that statement, or 2 if you disagree. All right, Chris, we're going to head back your direction here. This question reads, once some of us have transitioned back into the building, if we notice a coworker becomes symptomatic during the workday, can a coworker tell another coworker to go home, or does this have to be a supervisor or manager directing an employee to maybe check out and leave the building? Go ahead, Chris.
No, we don't want anybody just directing their coworkers to go home. Should you encounter this situation, just reach out to your manager, supervisor, and your manager or supervisor will take care of it.
Great. Probably a good approach there. Number 7 is for Heidi. And Heidi, the question reads, can the county look at electronic signature forms, including the ones that we use in departments? Depending on how the pandemic plays out, we may have to rely more on technology to do our work. What does electronic signature look like, Heidi?
So short answer is that this is happening a lot. A lot of our departments and offices are already using electronic signatures for a lot of their work. There's certainly more opportunity for us to roll that out to other operations. And my advice to you really would be, if you are in a position where that would be helpful to your work, talk to your supervisor or your manager and and they can run it up to the county attorney's office so that we can look at whether there are any restrictions on using electronic signatures for that particular work. For example, we're working right now under a revised order from the governor that allows us to do notaries' signatures in a different way. If that expires, we may not be able to do that anymore. Some agencies that we work with, either state or federal, may not allow electronic signatures on certain forms. So we just need to look at every case on a case-by-case basis. But like I said, please run those up the flagpole, get it to the county attorney's office for approval, but we would certainly like to make things as easy as possible.
Okay, good. Let's head back to Chris or Heidi, whoever wants to handle this one. It's over because I know you both are working with that transition group. And the question is, right now, Aurora is experiencing a spike in COVID-19 cases. If this continues into June, would offices in the area, the DMV, the Aurora Service Center off Chambers, still open on June 1st to the public? Chris, why don't you tee that one up?
So everybody, as you've heard, I think just about everybody on the team allude to, we are in the planning stages now of what buildings will open and how they will be staffed. And so once that final determination has been made, we'll reach out and share with everybody what we've decided about the Aurora Service Center, and you can probably expect to see that later on during the month of May. Regarding the Aurora DMV, that decision will be made by our clerk and recorder.
Okay, good. All right, Chris, since you took that first one on transition, I'll let Heidi handle this one. The question reads, Heidi, will cough or sneeze guards be installed on workstations since some of them are not 6 feet apart?
So I hate to keep saying the same thing, but a lot of this depends on the work that is happening at every level of the organization in terms of transition planning. So workstations vary greatly across the county, as many of you know. Certain buildings have certain setups, and it's really going to be very specific as to what those work areas look like and how we transition employees back to them. So generally speaking, we are not planning to install sneeze or cough guards on cubicles. If employees are seated at cubicles, most of our cubicle walls are high enough that they basically perform that sneeze guard function anyway. But there are some locations throughout the county where that kind of thing is being installed. Certainly, many of our forward-facing customer service windows that did not have any kind of barrier facilities is hard at work already on getting glass partitions installed in those areas to protect our employees. So it really just depends on the area and the type of work being done, but it's unlikely that sneeze guards will be installed on cubicles, and more likely that in those cubicle areas, we will limit the number of employees working at any one time.
Okay, great. We're going to take a break from the questions for our final poll question of the call. This statement, again, is 1, if you agree, 2, if you disagree. And the statement reads, I feel well supported by my supervisor or manager right now. Again, we're asking you to rate the performance of your supervisor or manager during the last 6 to 8 weeks. And the statement is, I feel well supported by my supervisor or manager right now. 1, if you agree with that, and 2, if you disagree. All right, Alicia, back in your court here. This question reads, will all county buildings be disinfected on a nightly basis, since staff and customers will be coming in and out of our buildings?
Thanks, Jim. So we will continue to disinfect on a robust schedule and as needed in our buildings. Our EVS teams will focus mostly on common areas for cleaning and disinfection, and will also be hand in hand with our other practices that we're asking folks to undertake. So we will ask employees to partner with us to help clean personal spaces after use each day and as needed. Facilities will provide cleaning products on a departmental basis to assist in cleaning personal workstations, some of those closer areas that you'll be working in. And we also ask that everyone continue to practice social distancing and masking to help prevent spread of the virus as well. So there's a number of things that will come together to create clean and disinfected spaces, in addition to those sneeze guards and some of the other building modifications we're undertaking. There will be a multifaceted approach to keeping these buildings as healthy as we can possibly make them.
All right, great. As you can tell, a lot of these questions are very similar in nature to some of the questions that we received from folks. Again, we had about 25 questions. We've condensed it down to about 12. And the last question we have is going to be for Chris or Heidi to take. And the question reads, I want to know if employees will be required to wear a mask or facial covering while they are in the building. This person says they believe it aligns with our norms and values and demonstrates respect for one another as coworkers, as well as the citizens we're serving and interacting with while in the building. So, Heidi, Chris, what is our policy going to be for employees inside of our building?
So, Jim, I'll take this one. The short answer is yes. We will be requiring all employees to wear masks when in our buildings. We will, however, be providing additional guidance to everyone before we open as a part of our transition planning that will give you specific guidance of when it's safe not to wear it and when you will be required to wear it. So you can be looking for that in the weeks to come before we reopen.
Great. All right, that concludes all the questions and the poll questions. We want to thank everyone for participating in the polling, and we'll get a little more creative with that polling feature as we continue with these meetings on Mondays moving forward. Look for those to be scheduled in the weeks to come. Now let's turn things back over to Ray for some closing remarks. Ray.
Great. Thanks, Jim, and thanks, ELT, for your help in answering all of those questions. And I also wanted to thank all of the employees who took the time to submit questions. Please continue to bring forward your questions, and we will make every effort to respond to them in a timely manner. In closing, there have been a lot of interesting articles written lately, and one that caught my attention was about fatigue. For a variety of reasons, we are all feeling the effect of this situation. If you work in the field, there is stress and anxiety that wasn't there before. And if you're working from home, those Zoom calls are actually more draining than in-person meetings. We have noticed that with each passing week, this grinds us down, and our patience is in short supply. So please take that into consideration when working with each other or dealing with your family. Everyone's rope is a little bit shorter, and a touch of kindness will go a long way. We are doing great work in these difficult circumstances. We are caring for our communities and our families. And the most important thing, we are Adams. Thank you and have a wonderful week.